the Talent Experience podcast featuring authentic conversations on the future of work.
Empowering you to better understand and deliver a best-in-class, future-proofed career experience.
For more insightful conversations, visit talentexperiencepodcast.com.
We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, I'm Rhonda Taylor, your host for today's episode of the Talent Experience. And today we're actually talking outside of the scope of what we usually speak about. And it's because we have an authority on hand today to discuss workforce planning. So I would like to welcome to the Talent Experience, John Baldino. John, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Rhonda. Nothing like some pressure. They're the expert that I am. Here I am. So John Baldino, I am president of Humareso, which is a global HR consulting firm, and have been for a little over 10 years now, and about just a hair over 30 years of experience in human resources and leadership development and organizational design and development and all of the goodies of HR.
Yeah. And John, you and I go back quite a way.
Yes.
We both were influencers for the major movement of, it went from what, global force to work human.
That's right. Yeah. I like how you say we were influencers. I'm not sure what we influence anymore, but I'm glad that you and I are still connected. That's the best part.
Hey, I'm sorry. I do not want to put us in the past tense because John, you and I are forever in the present. So John, workforce planning used to always be considered something that was done just at the C-suite level. Mm-hmm. And now with COVID and everything else, we're seeing that workforce planning has taken on a whole new meaning, a wider breadth. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I love that. And I will tell you, it is fascinating to me, really, how long workforce planning, quite honestly, has been on the shelf. It's really been a concept that used to be very core to good HR practice in terms of being taught. And it's sort of, I would say, for those of you who are of a certain age as I am, it used to be that if you wanted to make the move from, I'll say, the director level in human resources to either a VP or SVP level, this was one of the areas of concentration that was sort of a litmus test to know if you were ready to sort of move into that more global organizational perspective, because workforce planning is not your staffing strategy. And I think what has happened through the years since it was put on a shelf is that that's what people thought. Well, as long as I know, I keep an eye on, what talent I need and when I need it. Well, that is a staffing strategy. And let me make sure I say this. You need to have that. Please don't think I'm saying that's bad. You have to have that. But actually, that's a piece. It's about a third of the overall approach to workforce planning. So the fact that they've become synonymous is sort of doing a disservice to all of what workforce planning is supposed to be. I mean, on a technical standpoint, I will say to you, the building blocks of workforce planning is basically it's a third business strategy, a third staffing strategy, and a third talent management. That's really what the building blocks of workforce planning should be. And quite honestly, I gave them to you in a sequential order as well. So not only evenly divided, but you really need to have a handle on your business strategy before you get into your staffing strategy, and before then you really decide on what the tenets of your talent management strategy would be like. Now, Rhonda, I know you know this. I'm from Philadelphia, so let me be street about this, because that's a whole lot of technicals, right? For me to just say. On the street, what is workforce planning? What do you want to accomplish? How are you going to get there? And how are you going to use what you have? That's what this is. That's what workforce planning is. What do you want to accomplish? how are you going to get there, and how you're going to use what you have. That's it, everybody. And I want it to be simplistic because I think there has been a fear for years about workforce planning. And I think you're absolutely right, Rhonda. Those that are really trying to push forward through what's happening in the talent space today are the ones that are trying to be wiser about resuscitating this perspective.
I like how you put the street level. That's so basic and so understandable. But let's just go right. Let's break down the three of them. Let's talk about business. What does a business have to have in place to evolve a true workforce plan?
It's funny because people hear business strategy and they're like, oh, we have a business strategy. The first thing I'd like to say is, liar, liar, pants on fire? Maybe not. Maybe what the business strategy might be is, I don't want to irritate the CEO. That's not really a business strategy. That's right. That's sort of setting.
Or I don't want to bring on something that might cost too much money.
Yeah, right. If it's a financial,
heaven forbid.
Yeah, and it's so funny you're saying that too, because these sort of responses to a business strategy that are from that vein are defensive postures, right? And so what that means is, what instead of a business strategy, you're really developing a PTSD strategy for your organization, because you're just going to build everybody up to have some sort of stressful response to all of the factors that are coming at them. Oh no, what if this happens? Oh no, what if that happens? And that is whether it's, oh no, we're spending too much money. Oh no, we have too much overhead. Oh no, I'm going to irritate the C-suite. Oh no, I didn't make bonus, and everybody's mad because EBITDA was that. Like, if that's your response, then that's one that's reactive. That's not a business strategy. A business strategy is absolutely at its core proactive. It has to be looking forward, and it has to be looking forward collaboratively, creatively, right? With tenacity.
And everybody has to be drinking the Kool-Aid.
The idea of trying to do this as one person rowing the Titanic is silly, but it's the amount of organizations that have one champion and everyone else is sort of looking at that champion saying, yes, that's right. Good for you. Keep us going. That one person is going to die in a pile quickly.
Yeah.
The other problem for some businesses is that when you have a lack of clarity in a business strategy and everyone sort of thinks they know what it is, now picture a lot of people rowing the Titanic, but everybody's rowing at a different cadence, in a different direction. The ship is not going anywhere. And so you have this massive structure that you've been spending so much time trying to build, and it's not getting anywhere. It's just this ship that's never getting to port. And the problem for businesses today is hiring someone and ooh, you got me saying this, Rhonda, so I'm going to get in trouble from somebody today. The problem for businesses is that if you hire someone to just come in and help you do your mission, vision, and values and have this wonderful workshop, and I'm not belittling that, but that is not your business strategy. It is a piece of your business strategy, but it is not the total ball of wax.
It's not the solution.
No.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of companies that you and I both, I know this, have walked into companies and they've got their values, on the lobby wall, and everybody's so excited. If I stopped 6 people, right, 2 of them won't know any of them, and the other 4 will guess at a few, right? What does that tell me? We spend a lot of money creating and crafting vision and values, but it isn't translating to the day-to-day work. There's no impact, right? My strategy for my business, those things should have a heartbeat, and the heartbeat are the people that are carrying them out, because here are the objectives we're running towards as an organization. And don't make it a 10-point list. Have just a couple. You may have a really good single tagline that really encompasses a lot of the directional emphasis for your organization. Terrific. But people need to know what that is. If you're Walt Disney and you say we want to make magic for people every day, that's fantastic. What does that mean when I'm sweeping the streets versus working in marketing versus, doing the ice cream behind the counter? What does making magic mean? Someone needs to be able then to translate all the way down the org structure.
Okay. So just for the sake of time, we're going to move on to number 2.
I'm sorry. Yes, you
That's
got
okay.
me going.
That's okay. We're going to talk about workforce planning.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the staffing element of it.
Yeah.
And how does that evolve? Now, I'm going to give you an example. We witnessed something really interesting during COVID. A major drugstore company came on board, and they actually, we were talking about succession planning, and they actually went right down during COVID and said, you know what? If our forklift drivers do not come into work today with the vaccine and COVID and everything, there was a big disconnect in the chain.
Mhm.
So they had to have a succession plan in place, whether it was for a 1-day or a 5-day. They had to have somebody filling that position.
Yeah.
And we used to always think of succession planning as being something only done at the C-suite.
Yeah.
But COVID taught us that it has to be done in every position within your organization.
And I think that stepping back into the staffing strategy perspective, I would say what often is forgotten is that this is supposed to be how we will get there, right? It's a how. It's not just what, right? What will take us there? No, how will that take us there? So if you don't have the people to run the forklifts, we're going to have a huge problem. Our internal supply chain is going to come crashing to a halt. And so you have to be able to say, today, Mary, Joe, Bill, I know you have a manager in your title, but not today. Today, your title is forklift driver, because you'll have nothing to manage if we can't get this stuff where it needs to go. And I think COVID also taught people that it's rolling up your sleeves is not a dirty perspective. It's a worthwhile endeavor. I remember years ago being in HR for a distribution center for a major retailer in this country, and going onto the line and tagging belts that had come through for distribution to I think 38 different stores. And it's a union shop. And the shop steward came over to me and said, John, you're not allowed to be on this line. And I looked to my left and to my right, and there were 2 workers who English was a struggle as a second language. And I said, do you want me to leave? And both of them grabbed each of my hands from either side and said, no, stay. They were happy I was there. It wasn't about I'm in the union, you're not. I'm against you, I'm for you. It was about together, we had a whole lot of work to get done, to get distributed to all the stores that were waiting for this product. And I was there to help because they were short-staffed. Nobody cared about my union card that day. They cared that I had a heartbeat and would roll up my sleeves and participate. If you have to be at that level for your staffing strategy, you're not too proud for that. Do it. But then obviously you want to then allow that to influence what kind of needs you have moving forward to hire for, skill sets that you might be missing, etc.
Yeah, and the staffing strategies are so important, and they tie in. It was interesting that you actually put staffing strategy separate and talent next, because there is a marriage between the 2 of them.
Yeah.
So much more than the business plan and the staffing. I really see in workforce planning that staffing and talent is the heartbeat. The business side, the business development side of it all is the brain, but the heartbeat is the talent and the staffing. And where do you see the talent side? Because I have some strong views on this, so I'd love to hear yours first. Where do you see the talent side in workforce planning?
So, I mean, I think that it's a couple of things. One, really good talent management. And again, I'm going to refer back to the progression. What do you want to accomplish? How will we get there? And how will we use what we have? If we're at the place where we're going, how are we using what we have? That requires me to know what I have. What I would say that has to happen in talent today, with a little bit more decisiveness, is intentional diagnostics to know what your talent can do. And it isn't just in the role that they have. I'm talking broadly. There are skills and talents, aptitudes and abilities that your teams have that you may not know about, or you're not taking advantage of. And I don't mean in a negative way. You're not providing them an opportunity to exercise these competencies. Why not? I remember some years ago, there was an organization that wanted to begin to offer another vertical to the services that they offered as an organization. And yet they were worried about budget. And so they kept saying, we really don't want to increase payroll too much. And I said, look, let's do a capacity analysis in a couple of the departments. And we did. And one of the things the capacity analysis said was, you've got people working at 80% capacity. It's not terrible, but you pay people for 100% capacity. Just as an FYI to everybody listening, you do pay people for 100% capacity. And
you remember that you're the boss, John.
Right. And then on the other side of it, we started doing some competency analysis. What skills do people have within these two areas? And what we wound up doing is pulling two people out of one of the departments, and the capacity went from 80% to 95% for the remaining people because they were picking up the extra work. And those two people went and launched that vertical for this company, and we didn't increase payroll by a nickel. That took the time to do some of these analytics and manage your talent effectively. Do you think these two people who got this opportunity weren't excited? They were thrilled, because they didn't know there was a place for them to use some of their other abilities for the organization. And the organization was, ready to post jobs randomly online and see and hope that someone would apply. They already had loyal people right under their noses, and they needed to do that. That's where good talent management needs to be done more effectively today.
And you're so right, Tim. And we're finding now the analytics side of it all, like the skills, capabilities, they all have to be, addressed. And the value they bring to the company, the value they bring to the position. And John, like the analytics that can come out of the workforce will dictate the future challenges that the company has. So it's really interesting, because we talked about business being the brain and making the decisions for workforce planning. But at the end of the day, if the talent and capabilities of the organization are not in sync in reaching the goals, the organization dies.
Yeah.
Or is paying a lot of people who are not functioning at 100%.
Listen, the best laid plans, right? How many times have we sat at the leadership table, C-suite, whatever you want to call it, and been a part of business strategy? And this is why, honestly, one of the secrets of my success, I believe, through the years, has been sitting in those meetings and listening to all these wonderful ideas, and then saying to people, do you know how much it's going to cost for us to do those things? Do you know what we have within our building right now to help you accomplish those things? And to listen to, honestly, hear CEOs say things like, I think Mary knows how to do that. Does anybody, looking around at the table, right? Anybody know, Mary, I think she knows how to. Okay, so all of this is on Mary's shoulders. I'm sure she's going to be thrilled at the pressure that's going to mean for her. And you can't be serious that this multi-billion-dollar company is going to go and ask Mary. That's not a business strategy. You're not
Oh,
asking her to do you a favor. This is an intelligent person who's got competencies ready to be used, who cannot, as a solo practitioner, do it by herself. That's craziness.
oh, exactly, exactly. And I was just laughing at you because, or Mary can do it, or the one thing now that is, the C-suite is throwing is, oh, well, everybody could probably do their job better if we bring in a wellness program. And,
Yeah.
I really feel sorry for wellness companies right now, because sometimes they're being brought in and they're the scapegoat. Oh, well, you didn't do anything
Yeah.
for our workforce.
If you're bringing wellness in responsively or reactively, absolutely right. If you're bringing it in proactively as an uplift, I'm seeing organizations that are doing it well if they're doing it from that perspective. If it's a plug to try to keep people from leaving, again, that's reactive. No any program will work as a result of that.
Exactly. And I really feel sorry for wellness companies that get caught up in that scenario. In that scenario. So, John, what's the future of workforce planning?
Check out my book. No, I'm just kidding.
You crack me up.
The future really is twofold, I would say. One, as I said right at the beginning, I think it requires a commitment on the behalf of someone within your HR department to get back to it in the referential learning of workforce planning. We cannot sort of treat this cavalierly. We must treat this directly and intentionally. Learn it, know it, and then you can apply it. The other thing that I would say about workforce planning is there's a component to a staffing strategy, or I should say there's a few components to a staffing strategy, but one being borrowing employees that I think we're going to start to see a lot more happening over the next 10 years. And sort of this duality, even 3-4 companies. It's not about gig as much as it is about, real, in the US, real W-2 employees that are just at a few different places. And so work weeks and leveraging talent where they're working for one company that winds up feeding the second company that they're working for as well. I think you're going to see a lot of borrowing going on, more than maybe we've seen before.
Right. And it's all, it boils right down to companies looking for the talent and the capabilities in the workforce.
Yeah.
And they will take, the future says that these companies will take them for 10 hours a week.
They're going to have to. Yes.
And probably 10 hours at a much higher rate than what they're being paid on a regular full-time job. And that's the future, because these individuals that will walk the high wire, and we're seeing maybe about 10% of the workforce doing that now. But what they're walking the high wire, and there's no insurance that they're going to have a paycheck.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that individuals, we've got close to 10 million jobs open in the US, 6.6 million people to fill them. Well, I wasn't a math major, but those numbers tell me we don't have enough people to fill the jobs that are open. So we're going to have to be creative, and workforce planning is a way for you to define that creativity and then implement innovative strategies. And
John, on that note, I want to thank you. You are such a good friend and so entertaining.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me here, and it's always a treat for me to be with you.
This is Rhonda Taylor with the Talent Experience saying, have yourself a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Talent Experience podcast.
For more talent experience and future of work conversations, visit talentexperiencepodcast.com.
Follow us on Twitter at TalentXPodcast.
Or join the conversation with #Talent Experience Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter.
The Talent Experience podcast was brought to you by the fabulous Fuelies at Fuel 50.